Other than MSG, what are some typical foods that might be found in anybody's kitchen that they should really think twice about as they pertain to really negatively influencing all of that stuff happening in the brain?
Most things that aren't in your, and this isn't exclusive, but if it's not in your refrigerator or freezer, that's like sort of caution red flag number one. So if it doesn't need to be refrigerated or frozen, now this doesn't mean that just because it needs to be refrigerated and frozen, it's good for you.
Yeah.
But if it doesn't need to be refrigerated and frozen, there's a good reason for that. It's because it's been synthesized and manipulated into a bunch of different crazy ways. So your pantries and shelves should be relatively empty, with the exception of nuts and seeds and other things we could talk about in a second. But things that you're going to find that are heavily packaged and processed and can just sit on a shelf for many years, that's going to be guilty party number one.
Sure. So pretty much to make it very simple for people, anything that comes in a package or a box, for the most part, that's produced by a big food company would be probably not the best idea to be consuming on a regular basis.
That's exactly right. And looking at it from the other direction is the further it is from something you find directly in nature, the more cautious you're going to want to be, right? There's no such thing as a bread bush.
Yeah.
Right? Like, even people are like, it's whole grain. Well, it's bread. That's not, if you want to just go out and eat wheat, that's a different story. And I would say knock yourself out. It's very difficult to get diabetes from eating wheat, pure wheat, or to chew on a sugar cane. But people don't do that.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, like, even looking at the model of wild animals, I mean, up until there's arguments now that based on the environmental toxicity, wild animals are, maybe gaining a little more weight than they traditionally had. But in the wild, if they're eating a native diet, they're really not, you don't see animals developing obesity and leptin resistance and diabetes until they're domesticated really by humans. And then we're, feeding them.
Exactly. Oh, go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, so just saying that we're kind of feeding them our scraps for what we think they should be eating based on our amazing knowledge.
And two quick anecdotes to further that point, Yuri. In clinical research around obesity and hormonal disruption, there was actually a big problem up until about 50 years ago, and that was that researchers actually couldn't make animals fat.
Huh. That's amazing.
They would try all sorts of things. They would just try to give the rats unlimited food. This is just called an ad libitum study. The rats would just stop eating naturally. They would actually try to pump food, natural food for rats and mice, into their stomachs. The rats would just spontaneously eat less because the hypothalamus, until they discovered what they call the cafeteria diet, which is basically, let's just feed rats what we feed people, and boom, the rats become fat, and it's no problem at all. So
game over.
Just giving the rats a higher quantity of rat food literally couldn't make them fat, but giving them the wrong quality did. And another quick anecdote is, if you do a quick web search, there's usually at least one story per year, at least in the States, where they'll talk about a zoo that has a gorilla or monkeys or something that gets sick, like it gets heart disease. And then they stop feeding it biscuits and start feeding it what a gorilla eats. And it's magic because the gorilla no longer has heart disease. And it's like, it's perceived as this magic formula, but if you put lighter fluid in your car's gas tank, it's going to break down. That's not what a car is meant to run on.